The Veteran's Voice, stories that deserve to be heard, is proudly sponsored by Calling Gilbert, Wright and Carter.
I'm Kyle Evans, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant retired, 2 tours in Iraq, wounded in combat in 2007, and this is my story. September 11, 2001 happened approximately 3.5 months after I graduated high school. And from a very small town in Virginia, right on the Chesapeake Bay. And I didn't necessarily have a lot of options. I didn't get the best of grades in school. And so I really wanted to kind of find a purpose. And I thought that my outlet would be to go and serve my country. I entered in the Army on 18 February 2003, just before the initial invasion into Iraq. Afghanistan was already going on. And our first day, I'll never forget it. We were sitting in reception in 30th Adjutant General Battalion in Fort Benning, Georgia. And they looked at us all in the eyes and they said, men, you are all gonna go to war. And I'll never forget that feeling that I had for the rest of my life. And in September of 2003, we found out that we had orders to deploy to Iraq with the 1st Infantry Division at Fort Riley, Kansas. And by November, just short of my 21st birthday, I was in al-Ramadi, Iraq, part of the Sunni Triangle. And in October 2006, we were redeployed again, this time to Mosul, Iraq, part of the Nanwa province that covers all of northern Iraq. Subsequently, in about February of 2007, I was placed on a gun truck as a lead vehicle convoy commander, escorting supplies throughout the Nanwa province from Mosul to Tal Afar, where we had outlying troops that were embedded with local Iraqi military forces. On 10 May 2007, we rolled over top a triple-stacked IED that blew up directly underneath my seat. This resulted in numerous injuries, traumatic brain injury, significant back injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was subsequently retired in 2010 as a staff sergeant from Fort Stewart, Georgia. I was trying to figure out what my purpose in life was going to be, because I had never forecasted ahead of being a soldier. That's what I wanted to do. I thought that I had found my calling. In February 2011, I had an opportunity to join the Orlando Department of Veteran Affairs, part of a new program to develop called the Homeless Veteran Supported Employment Program. This program was part of Secretary Eric Shinseki's initiative to end homelessness amongst veterans by 2015. The way that they were going to do this was to find jobs for veterans in transition and homeless veterans to get them back in the workforce and hopefully get them on their feet. This provided me incredible therapy, as I had the opportunity to go into homeless camps, to go into local jails, and speak and meet with veterans who were at their lowest low, and try to provide an inspiration, try to provide a purpose, direction, and motivation, so that they could reintegrate back into society and they didn't have to live the rest of their lives like they were currently living. No matter what generation you look at, war is a very complicated and convoluted environment, and there's not a cookie-cutter solution that we can throw a blanket over everyone and fix them. Everyone has their own unique trials and tribulations and things that they deal with coming home. And some people find coping mechanisms in different areas, and they're not always the best of areas to look for. Speaking on the VA sector alone, I think we have to have more accountability. And we have to ensure that, one, we're creating a culture where physicians and primary care doctors want to be. You know, if we can create the culture that embraces them and doesn't swamp them down on their workload, then they're probably less likely to want to leave. I can't really say anything negative about my treatment at the VA once you were seen. I guess the only gripe that you could kind of have is the amount of workload per the amount of providers. You don't get much face time in the VA, you know, and there's this saying that you get what you pay for. But I wish that if there was one thing that I could change, it would be the level of connection or feeling that you would have with your provider, and then also to minimize the amount of turnover within the system I know I've been through 4 or 5 primary care doctors in probably 2.5 or 3 years. And so it makes it difficult to establish that level of trust, that level of confidence in your provider, because you never know if they're going to be here from one appointment to the other. And then when you change providers, now you have to catch your new provider up. You have to tell your story. You have to run through everything all over again. And it gets to be a wearisome process. We have had one too many suicides here in Central Florida since I've been here, since late 2010. And it's something that is very near and dear to my heart as well. And so, trust is a big part of that. Now, we're not going to be able to stop every doctor from leaving or every nurse from leaving, but we need to figure out a way to make the continuity flow stronger, to empower the veteran or the service member to want to get whatever's bothering them off their chest and out of their head. Every doctor that I've ever spoke with there says it's probably one of the most rewarding assignments that they've had during their career. But there is also, in some ways, a toxic leadership climate that drives a lot of these good doctors and nurses and providers out, back into private practice. I will say that it is difficult in a way to be an employee and also a patient. It's a very gray area that you get placed in, and it ultimately was one that I could not deal with on a regular basis. So I decided to leave the Orlando VA in August of 2014 and started my own business. In my entrepreneurial leap, I had made a commitment to myself that I would always provide preferences and opportunities to not only veterans but to also to their spouses. I believe the veteran spouse is one that's very often forgotten about during the transition and reintegration process. And so, we have hired over 50 veterans and their spouses throughout the duration of our business, Redcon Solutions Group, and we take great pride in that. We have came a long way in society for the treatment, the care, and the respect that we provide the men and women who lay their life on the line every day. But there's still work to do. And as a community, if we can embrace that and provide that purpose, direction, and motivation, we can have an incredibly productive generation of warfighters who are currently coming home. We have been at war for the last 16 years, and it's not always publicly televised as much as it once was due to other ongoing things in the world. But that is something that we should never forget. As we sit here today, there are men and women, who are 8 to 10 hours ahead of us, who have already ran their combat missions for today, who are getting ready to go out the gate and provide the freedoms that we enjoy here so dearly. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily support the reason why we're there, but I think as society has come to support the men and women who are there. And I think a big reason of that is because now, it's a different generation. And a lot of the men and women who fought in Vietnam are now parents or relatives of people who are currently fighting. And they understood, and they currently understand, how important it is to embrace them once they come home.